Hey, alright, I'll tell you. When I got my hands on Dead Space 3, I expected another claustrophobic, isolated, gore-filled horror game set on a derelict ship somewhere in space. All the classic buzzwords that describe Dead Space when you Google it. I walked into it, and allowed me to run my numbers again. I expected a lot more than 7 to 8 chapters of that classic Dead Space experience. People got into this series for what the game is supposed to be. A survival horror game set in space, again on a derelict ship somewhere. What Dead Space 3 delivers is instead more so a military shooter in space. And on that matter, it's barely even in space, as a majority of the 19 chapters take place on a bright snowy planet. I'm not here to report that we were sold bad product. Rather, I'm here to report that we were sold a different product than what we've come to know. It's a good game by any textbook definition, but it's a bad Dead Space game, and that is the quintessential problem. Allow me to start here. I found that while playing this, the feeling of horror just slowly tapers off. It's not that the game isn't trying. There are plenty of jump scares, and there's, great moments of the music amping up at the right times and anxiety spiking, but once you have your upgraded weapons and you know where to shoot the enemies, they want you to aim for the limbs to be more effective. It really takes the feeling of, oh my god, how do I defeat this ungodly abomination, that whole fear and panic behind it, and moves it to just shoot them in the legs and then stomp on the corpse as they wriggle around on the ground. It sort of became routine after a while. I also hate to say it, but most of the time you could tell when a jump scare was coming. You could take an educated guess and assume whenever you open up a door or turn a corner, a necromorph thing is going to fall out of somewhere and scare you. After a while, it's not that scary. We also got to knock off some brownie points for the fact that we play about 12 or 13 chapters planet side. You remove the horror environments the first 2 installments harped on. You lose that sense of isolation. It's no longer dark and brooding. The pace is off. It doesn't feel as terrifying or visceral, and you somewhat begin to tread away from the psychological horror aspect of the games. I have to say, they're also human enemies, which only further pushes the horror away and brings us more towards the military shooter in space aspect. As you can see, I am posted up behind cover, ducking and shooting. Definitely feels like Gears of War. In a classic EA power move, they went right ahead and added microtransactions. Does the sun shine every day, my friends? Of course it does. Why should we be surprised? I need not say why microtransactions are bad. But you see, it brings a sense of overpoweredness to a survival horror game. Hence the oxymoron. Comparison is the thief of joy, my friends, and this is a lesson I want you to hang on to as you continue on your journey in life. What this means is, when you compare your own accomplishments to the likes of others, you begin to undermine your own achievements. Dead Space built itself as a survival horror game. It wasn't until the time of the 3rd installment that EA executives wanted to push visceral games to incorporate elements of the ever-popular mainstream shooters of that time. This was done in an effort to extract more cash from a widespread audience. After Dead Space 3 underperformed, EA essentially shelved the franchise and eventually shut down Visceral Games. And there is a real-world example of our lesson. A comparison was made between Dead Space 3 and games very much unlike it. Although Dead Space in its own right was a successful franchise, the comparison had been made. EA felt as if they needed to pivot the franchise in order to be successful. Instead, Dead Space 3 led to the end of Dead Space as a whole, because it had no business being anything other than what it had established itself as. And it's really a shame. This was a good game, it's a great franchise, but this one just doesn't feel the same.